All right, we are here. Another Wednesday night live stream. We've got this guy here that's going to help us out because today we're taking a look at another claim from the King James Bible Research Council. It's actually from that same video that we took a look at before, but this time we're going to take a look at their treatment of P32. That's Papyrus Manuscript 32, and in it is a passage from Titus, chapter 2, somewhere around 1 to 8 or 9. And we want to take a look at that because obviously, given what we've seen of P52 and P64, I can't imagine that their treatment of P32 is going to be any better. So we're going to dive deep into this and just test the claim out and see if they're right. Obviously, if you're reading the title of this video, you've got an idea already that I think they're quite wrong here, and their research is rather shoddy, if not non-existent. And I know that that's kind of rough. That's rough. I understand. But like, you got to understand that they presented one idea and didn't really interact with anything, with nothing at all. They just said, "Oh, look, it's this, and so it supports the TR." But the reading that he put in there doesn't actually support the TR. And of course, we're going to take a look at that. So I'm going to say hello to everybody as we get into the chat here. I've seen a couple of you pop in. Discerner says, time to get into the weeds. And we are going to get into the weeds. Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak is here. He says the KJBRC is rippling all right, but I can't be sure of that. Yeah, I think they would decline that. I think from what I understand, King James Bible Research Council is attempting to distance themselves from Ripplinger. I believe that's what's happening. Now, from what I also understand is, everyone has their own kind of independent thought inside the King James Bible Research Council, so there might be some Ripplingerites among them. So we have Brother Maynard. I found, what was it, Monty Python, The Quest for the Holy Grail, on YouTube for free, and I watched it while we were waiting for the Chichimon, the boat that was going to take us across for a camping trip. It was fun. Bible Version Conspiracy, how is it going? Good to see you here. Only meds I take are D2. There you go. Brother Maynard, do you think the King James has been made subject to Gail R and she has control over them? No. I feel like there's a way as much as a duck thing going on here. Heaven Jones is here. How's it going? I was kind of hoping you would pop in. We're going to do the kind of analysis I think that you really enjoy. Get the nerd going. All right, Friendly Neighborhood Cheese Freaks talking a little bit about the Ripplingerite stuff. Now, I'm probably not going to go through every single comment like I have been, just because it's getting time consuming. And if we do that, we won't get to the super duper stuff. All right, Mr. Moreno says country and Western are two different types of music. Are they? Are they? Really? Bluegrass and country are different kinds of music. I'll say that. Nerdy Youth Pastor, hey, how's it going? Good to see you here. I'd say they're more like Ripplinger light, but I get the comparison. Yeah, they're not quite there. Like I said, I think they're trying to distance themselves from Gail Ripplinger, which is good in my opinion, because she's got some really, really wonky ideas. She's really inconsistent. That could be a whole video, or you could just go check out Bible Conspiracy's YouTube channel, and he can tell you all about those consistencies. What else we got here? Oh, Dwayne is in there. He's saying almost ready. There we go. Brother Maynard says, don't get turned into myths. There we go. Get Gnomed is here. How's it going? Good to see you. You got the wrench. So if you see someone you don't like, just ban them. No, I'm just kidding. Use your power wisely. And we got Gekino says, aren't the KJVOs the ones saying the early papyri are all corrupted and made by Gnostic heretics? So why are they now using it in support for the TR? Yeah, so again, the King James Version, folks, they're not monolithic. Some will say they are, and some will say they're not. In this, it's the same with the Vulgate. Some will say the Vulgate is really like bad, and like we did. I think it was Dr. David Brown from the King James Bible Research was kind of getting at that, the critical text is evil because they use the Latin Vulgate, but meanwhile the King James Version translators had no qualms with using the Vulgate in a number of scenarios. So there is definitely some inconsistency among people who call themselves King James Version onlyists. But yeah, as a Byzantine guy, I mean, it'd be cool to see Byzantine readings in the papyrus, but we're not expecting it, right? Because there's a geographic lockdown, I think, there. So I'm not heartbroken if they're not there, which is why I'm coming. It'd be cool, and I did start tracking some Byzantine readings among the papyrus manuscripts. There's not many, but there are some, and I'll share a video on that later. I'm going through the Gospel of John right now in P66, and I found three, and someone pointed out a fourth one in the first 3 chapters. So that's about 10% of the variance between the Byzantine and the critical text. So it's very low, right? These are clearly Alexandrian manuscripts, but we'll get there. Mr. Moreno says, the real threat are the Rucklingers. I put Ruckman and Ripplinger together, right? There's a very extreme form of King James Version onlyism, and these are your Ruckman, Ricklinger, right? I'm not going to say too much about that, but yeah, legend says they can only be destroyed with a magic dagger. All right, Kevin Hawthorne is here. It says, good evening from Lakeland, Florida. All right, so let's do this. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to take a look.
There is no evidence of...
My video restarted. Hold on here. I got to find it. It was at 43. And then I'll show you guys. Okay, here we go. There we go. All right, so you probably recognize this video. This is the same video we looked at when we were taking a look at their claims on P52. P64 is in this video. I didn't realize it's toward the end. But they had written an article, and I touched on the article and the issues surrounding that in a previous live stream, I think about a month ago. Between, it's been a month since you've been on. Yeah, I know, I get it. But yeah, about a month ago, we talked about P64 and the article that they had on the King James Bible Research Council and how utterly atrocious that is. And we're going to see the same thing here with P32. So let's listen in, and then we'll go from there. This is only like a 10 or 15 second clip. Here we go.
This Receptus. Papyrus 32, 200 AD, has 2 spelling differences, and beside that, it is a 100% match to the Textus Receptus. And the Textus Receptus is based on the traditional text.
All right, so there it is. That's essentially it for P32. And what's absolutely wild here, well, for maybe not absolutely wild. Okay, I'm exaggerating. To be fair, there's really only one instance in the manuscript. Let me see. I'll pop up the picture that he shows here. There in this entire manuscript, there really is only one difference here between the critical editions and the Textus Receptus and the Byzantine text. And he's highlighted that one thing, and of course he's going to contest this. I think he called it a scribal error. He did the same thing with P52 with having the article in front of Pilatos or Pauline. You can go back and watch my P52 discussion to determine how he tries to get around that, but it doesn't quite work. But let me listen to that again. I think I missed it. Hang on.
Papyrus 32, 200 AD, has 2 spelling differences, and beside that, it is a 100% match to the Textus Receptus. And
okay, so he's got a spelling difference. So he's calling it a spelling difference, and maybe you can, but it's different. It's interesting because there's actually three contested readings here. So you have a reading from the Textus Receptus. Then you have the critical text and the Byzantine text are actually in agreement here, and then there is a third reading. That is not in any of the text. That's just kind of floating out there. And I think what's happening is that the reading there is actually that third reading. That this is a reading which isn't in any of our printed editions. So we're going to take also a little bit of a look at that. So before we do, I want to share with you really quick. This is a little bit unrelated, but my friend Stephen Hackett. He is doing a Greek course for kids. So if you have kids, this is not a paid advertisement. It was going to be, and then we just I'm not being paid for this. He's just a friend of mine. He's got this job. He works for Biblical Mastery Academy, and he's putting together this course for children. So if you've got children and you want them to learn Greek when they're young, they absorb things easier. When you get older and you try to learn, it's harder. It's harder to learn Greek when you're older. So get them in while they're young. They're offering a course there. I think the course is starting tomorrow. So if you want to do that, the link is right here, kids at Biblical Mastery Academy. So go check that out. That's it. That's my spiel for my friend there. So you may see a couple of these from time to time, and I just want to support him in what he's doing. All right. Now, we're going to take a look at the passage here. So this is in Titus chapter 2. I want to read the first little bit of it just to make sure that we know what we're talking about. So in Titus 2:1, it starts off, but speak. Oh, this is King James. Let me change that. I like the King James, but where is it? New King James. I know it's in here. I thought I had set it to NKJV. Look at that. All right, so, but as for you, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine, that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love and patience. The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that the admonition, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Likewise, exhort the young men to be sober-minded, in all things showing yourself to be a pattern of good works in doctrine, showing integrity, and this is the word here that's going to cause a little bit of issue here. This is really what the debate is over. Reverence and incorruptibility. Now, again, related to this discussion is another textual variant in the same verse. It's this one here, incorruptibility. In the critical editions, we do not have that word in there. So here you can see, right, the Nestle Aland text omits incorruptibility. And the reason why it's interesting is because the word in Greek behind integrity is not the same, but looks very similar to the word here. It's aphthorion. I can't remember. I'll have to read it. I've been saying it all day, and here we are. But so this is the passage, and then in 8, just to finish off, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that the one who is an opponent may be ashamed, having nothing evil to say to you. So again, this is the issue here. P32, this is question. So in the ESV, you come back down to here. Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, and in your teaching show integrity. So we have integrity there and integrity here. But the word is different. The word is different between the critical edition and the Textus Receptus. So we have a different word, even though it's translated the same. Then there's a third word, which I don't know. I looked it up in BDAG, and I was uncertain as to how to apply that word in this context. It's the difference of one letter. And of course, lo and behold, that's the one letter that we're going to be talking about, right? That's the one that he's banking all of this argument on, the one that's, a scribal error. Interestingly enough, in the video, Steve Combs argues that there's 2 spelling errors. If you caught that when we were listening, that there's besides these 2 spelling errors, it's 100% match with the TR. So I was able to find one spelling difference. Now, he didn't say errors. I think he said spelling differences. I was able to find one that I was able to determine what he was talking about with one of them. But the second spelling difference that he was talking about, I could not determine what it was. Because when I looked up P32, which we can look at here, let me see if I have it here. When I looked up P32 and compared, it's this one here, and compared all the writing that's available on P32, that's extant, there's practically no difference between the Textus Receptus, aside, maybe he's referencing, where is it, right here, the nomina sacra. Can I zoom in? Yeah, so he might be referencing the nomina sacra. That would be the only other possible spelling difference that I think he might be talking about, is theou being, theta, epsilon with a line over, as opposed to being spelled out, theta, epsilon, omega, epsilon. So those 2, I think. But interestingly enough, is I compared all the writing here to the critical editions, to the Byzantine edition, and to the Textus Receptus, and all of the extant material matches perfectly. Like this isn't really a distinctive Textus Receptus text. Even when you come down to the part of it that is that we're discussing, this is the debated portion, which is right here. Okay, this portion here, and we'll get into that. Even when you get here, it could go in multiple ways. Except now I think it's one of the three, because there's three issues here. But I think it really only fits the one which we don't have. So that's what's happening here. Now let me I'm gonna grab my notes here, because I'm getting a little, it's like I've been gone for 3 or 4 weeks and I forgot how to do live streams. No, it's good. But yeah, so there are possible 3 different readings. And again, it's coming down to where he put the new here. So I have taken a look at 2 transcriptions. So a transcription is when somebody takes this and they write it out in text. I have it here. Yeah. Oh no, what did I do? So I have the transcription here. And so this transcription is taken from here, from Philip Comfort's work. So he went through and looked at all the papyrus manuscripts and made transcriptions, put them down in here, published it so we can read on. He's got a bunch of information. He says that P32 was written sometime in the early 2nd century. So he puts it somewhere between 100 and 150, I would think. Today, I think people are leaning closer to 200. When it comes to dating these manuscripts, it's kind of it's a very subjective process. We'll just take that into consideration. Like for example, in here, what Comfort does is he bases his opinion of a 100 to 150 date based on a couple known manuscripts, like where they know the age of them. In one instance, there's a papyrus manuscript, not a New Testament manuscript, but a papyrus manuscript from Oxyrhynchus, which has a known date. It can be written no later than 100. And so they take this manuscript, right? Where is it? This manuscript here. And they compare how the writing looks with this other one. And then they go, oh, it looks kind of like this. And so, it's probably closer to the date here. I'm sure that's simplified, but generally speaking, that's how it's done. And I think it's quite subjective. And so again, in the last video I did where we talked about P64, I expressed a bit of doubt. Not doubt isn't the word, but kind of like annoyance or maybe grievance, that it's such a subjective process. And so the dates that are offered, we ought to take them with a grain of salt. That's just how it is with papyrus manuscripts, unless there's an indicator on there. I think there's something called a ad terminus, which is the latest possible date. And an example of that would be like if somebody writes a manuscript talking about how they gave an offering at the temple, you would know that manuscript was written before 70 AD, that it can be no later than 7. That's the ad terminus. So apparently one of the comparative manuscripts has this terminus of 100 AD. And he puts in brackets that's certain. Okay. But a little bit of the process of how these things are dated. So 200 AD still, that's still early, right? That's still interesting. That's still cool and good. But again, we come back to the question, does this manuscript support the TR reading? Now, let's pop over to the comments really quickly here, and then we'll continue on. Where are we here? Scene. There we go. I'm going to get this stuff sorted out at some point or other. All right. Aren't the KJVOs the ones saying the early papyri are corrupted? We went through that. The real threat are the Rucklingers. Yes. All right, here we are. Brother Maynard says, I found an original Rosetta Stone with extra piece that didn't break off from the 1st century. That has the King's English version. Nice. All right. Funnily enough, there are other copies of the same text the Rosetta Stone preserves, just as old as it. Interesting. I know you were kidding, but sometimes truth is more interesting than fiction. How's it going, Rod? Good to see you there. It's all Jew and Greek to me. He's waving to everybody. The official INTF list date is 3rd century. Yeah, see, there we go. And I probably saw that, and I was just like, so again, these things are, yeah, nerdy youth pastor, I wouldn't even do that. Plus or minus about 50 years. I don't like, this manuscript P32 is a perfect example. Quem in terminus, that's it. Yeah, so this manuscript P32 is the perfect example, if what Heaven says is true, and it probably is, because Heaven's pretty good like that. So the fact that Philip Comfort and all his Professional astuteness came to a 100 to 150 date on there, only for it to be revised later to the 3rd century. That's almost 150 years off. So plus or minus about 50 years. I think there's kind of a move towards being a little bit more careful with the dates. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because when I did the manuscript project, where I put all the papyrus manuscripts on a spreadsheet and was able to determine which verses are which which is still great for that. One of the criticisms that we got for that was that the dates were wrong. And so in that spreadsheet, I put early, mid, and late dates. But what happens is there's a lot of mismatch between dates, between INTF, between Wiki, between Comfort, and all of these guys. The dates aren't settled on the papyrus. And whether we could say 50 or like 50, like, I don't know. I don't think it's possible to get beyond 100 years, to narrow it down to anything less than 100 years. And I think that is even being quite generous. So yeah, I am expressing a little bit of a doubt there. So there we go. Yeah, so kept pure in all ages. He's got it. Terminus ad quem and terminus a quo. There you go. Yeah. I'm not in the scholastic stuff enough. All right. Heaven says pretty much always only plus minus 50 and never narrower. Yeah, and again, it sounds like even that is generous. Kept beer in all ages says, aside, thanks for the Revelation videos. Oh, yes. Glad you enjoyed them. Breakout session to come. Sweet. Yeah, I'll have to catch that. I found some interesting stuff, or someone shared with me some interesting stuff about the book of Revelation. And so I've got a book coming in the mail tomorrow. I'm going to read about Andreas of Caesarea. So for those who are in the know with text critical issues in Revelation, Andreas is kind of a big figure. I didn't realize this. But he practically saved the book of Revelation from being removed from the canon. And I know that sounds absolutely wild, but in some of the preliminary stuff I looked at after that conversation, it looks like Andreas is kind of like the hero for the book of Revelation in 500 or 600, somewhere around there. Anyway, I'm going to read up on it and share some of those details. Some of the other like crazy wild stuff about Revelation. Didn't know this. But apparently, and again, I'm saying apparently, right, because I haven't fully researched this, but a number of crazy, wacky interpretations have come out of Revelation. And I'm not talking about the Left Behind books. I'm talking about like in the early centuries. And so the church apparently didn't like that and was like, okay, maybe it's not canon. But anyway, the book of Revelation ended up getting copied by a number of like magicians and occultists. Like, this is weird stuff. So I'm genuinely curious now. Now, I don't think that it's impacting our edition of the Textus Receptus. That's what I have here. I don't think it's necessarily impacted our copy of Revelation, but there's just some interesting blips about that book. And so I'm going to probably share at some point a little bit about that. Now, I'm getting off topic here. So I want to come back here and we'll take a look at P32 again. Where's the button? There it is. All right. Okay. Oh no, what's going on here? There we go. I'm zooming in on the wrong page. Yeah. So again, where the issue lies here is right here. Let me pull this up. So there you go. This is the transcription. So there's two transcriptions here. So the first transcription you're looking at is from Titus chapter 2. I think it's somewhere around verse 2 to the end of verse 8. And the transcription was taken directly from Comfort's book here. So if you're keeping track of my social media, you'll see I got all excited when these came in the mail. So I've been kind of poking around at them and figured this would be a really good test base for his resources on P32. So the stuff that you see in red, that's the actual text that's extant on the manuscript. So when you look at the manuscript, these letters here will be represented in red on the transcription. And then the black letters in the square text represents the inferred text, right? And you can tell based on what lines are ended and where they end as to how many letters are going to be in the non-extant part. So if you take a look at this manuscript, you know that we are at the very end of the page. You can see that this is the right margin. And so we can make a judgment that the next thing on the next set of letters on the next line is generally going to be the next word we have in our printed editions, generally speaking. And again, with this stuff matching, with these extant portions matching both the Textus Receptus, the critical text, and the Byzantine text, I think what's in the black here is probably pretty solid. Now you're going to notice, if you're an astute viewer, that I have some in green here. There's just 2 letters. And what this represents is the difference in the transcription between comfort here and the INTF. So that's the INTF. I'm not even going to say it. It's such a German phrase. That's INTF. And so they have a slightly different transcription, right? So they've actually pulled the lambda from the previous line and put it down at the beginning of this line. The previous line on the manuscript is actually not extant, so we just don't know. Can I show it there? Yeah. So we can see the ELO here, right here, from here. We can see that just barely. You can just barely make it out, but it's there. And then you have Didascalus Hina right there. So the line that would normally be above this is not extant. We just don't know. We don't know. As far as I know, it could be the previous page, but there's no certainty there. So this L, based on letter counts, may or may not be there in the non-extant portion. So I provided here also a letter count for the line based on the transcription. And that's important to recognize that this is based on the transcription. So I got the letter count for the transcription provided by Comfort, and then the letter count based on the count by INTF. And this is important because we're going to use that to show some very important details about our variant, Afthorion. Now, this is what Comfort has. Now, there is a difference here. I believe INTF has a new there. So this is where the distinction comes in. And this is where Steve Combs is going to argue that this is actually a Textus Receptus reading. Now, based on the transcription, I believe the Textus Receptus, which I have right here in my hand, right here. Okay, I got them highlighted so that I can find them easier. The word that should be here should be adiaphthorion. Adiaphthorion. Not Afthorion. So there's an alpha delta iota prefix onto this word in the Textus Receptus. So the transcription, as you see it here, this is not a Textus Receptus reading. Okay, so the transcription in both the in Comfort's edition and in the INTF edition are not showing a Textus Receptus reading. This one could possibly be. It could possibly be a Textus Receptus reading if for whatever reason a D is added to that. But in the INTF transcription, they've actually taken the row here and turned that into a nu. Now, I would say ni. We have the knights who say ni, because that's modern Greek pronunciation. That's how you say nu in modern Greek. It's ni. But apparently the knights who say ni, they moved on. They are now the knights who say it, or don't say it. Okay, anyway, having some fun there. So we come back to the manuscript, and this is actually, this is the crux of the whole matter here. If this is a nu, it cannot be a Textus Receptus reading. If this is a row, it could possibly be a Textus Receptus reading, though I think there's other indications that tell us that it couldn't be. Now, again, if we come down here, the question is what does this look like? I don't know about you, but that looks like a nu. Now, again, I say that somewhat hesitantly, right? Because you get someone like Philip Comfort here, okay? He in his like he does this is his work. This is what he did for a living, right? This is Philip Comfort's bread and butter, okay? He said that that's a row. So the way that I would see that, if I was looking through Comfort's eyes and I saw this, right, I would see this as a row. Maybe he's seeing this as a row and this as a iota, and then he has an extra long alpha here. Of course, that's damaged. You can't really see this, but this is definitely the rightmost stroke of an alpha on this manuscript, and you can compare that with there or there. That this is definitely an alpha. So does it come over, and is this little dot here the end of the alpha? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because if you look at all the other alphas on the page, they're not that long. They're not that long. So I think what's actually the case here is that this is indeed a new. This is the iota, which is damaged there, and you can see that the alpha is also damaged, so that makes sense. So you have a new, a iota, and an alpha. So I think that's probably, in fact, most likely the proper reading there is that this is a new and not a row. So, excuse me. So if we come back here to our transcription and we correct this, I would say this would have to be a correction to a new. Oh, I don't have Greek characters on here. Go figure. All right. So here, we'll cheat. We'll just put a capital N there. So if we have this, well, this gets really interesting. So this leaves us with a couple, with another reading. Because in this, as we look at this, there are three possibilities here. We can have aphthorion, which is the critical edition reading. We can have diaphthorion, which is the Textus Receptus Byzantine reading. Textus Receptus Byzantine reading. Or we can have this one here, aphthonion, which is neither. This is not in our printed editions. So which one is it? Which one is it? Well, we can rule out the Textus Receptus reading for two reasons. Well, I think I put three. Let me pop my notes up here. I got three. The first one is that he's calling this a spelling, a difference in spelling. And I when I was putting the notes together, I thought I heard error in spelling. So I don't think it could be an error. Now, again, this is not what he said. This is just, if someone's going to say it's an error, a new and a row are significantly different. They're like amongst one of the most two different letters in the Greek alphabet. They're very different. I don't think a scribe is going to confuse those. I think it would be a very crazy thing for a scribe to confuse a new and a row. Like they just aren't going to be confused. The other thing here is that the letters per line counts, and this is where we get interesting. The letters per line counts don't allow for the adia prefix to be added onto aphthorion, right? So again, if we come back here, and he's saying that he's just accepting this as a spelling difference, okay. He still has to wrestle with the fact that we don't have the beginning of the letters of thonion. It could be aphthonion or it could be adiaphthonion. Now, if it's adiaphthonion, we have an issue because as far as I know, there are no textual variants involving adia attached to this with the new. That would be a spelling error again, right? A spelling issue. But the other thing is here is if you add those three letters, you end up with a count of 27 letters per line. Now you're going to say, yeah, but we don't know what's in the text. Well, we have a pretty good idea what's actually in here. But let's just assume if we take a look at the line counts, we have 23s, 26. That's the highest one. 26. We got 24 characters, 25, 21, 24, 22, and then bam, 27. All of a sudden we have a line with the most characters on it. Again, could a line have 27? Maybe. But don't you find it strange that the line that's in question happens to be on the outlier of this question? Again, I think this speaks to the necessity that whatever is before here, whatever is before the known portion of the manuscript, can't be any more than two or even maybe three characters. We cannot add another three characters with this. Otherwise, it would be, to quote a famous philosopher, right out. So it doesn't work. You can't. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. So So the question then is, well, what do these words mean? We're going to take a look at the 3 words here. But first, before we do that, let's get back over to the comments and we'll go from there. All right. Glad you enjoyed them. I have to catch the Book of Revelation stuff. I did watch that. I did watch the first one there. It was good. Flame says the Book of Revelation was preserved in a purple shirt made of divine cloth. Yeah, that's right. Turns out if you look at the tag on the back, it's actually a really small copy of the Book of Revelation. Preserved on the purple shirt. Every time I get on here. Okay. Dwayne Green, can't the INTF transcriptions be made by anyone, or do they have to be approved first? You have to be approved to have access to make changes. Like, you can't just go on and add a transcription, but you can be given special access to do so. So it's not a free for all. It's not like Wiki. You can't just sign up and make transcriptions. That's not how it works. So, typically the people who would be doing them would be people who understand and know what to do. And it wouldn't surprise me if they use something like Comfort to help them along in their transcription work, possibly. Interesting though that they would add the new on the end of the one and the lambda at the start of the first line there. But yeah, so there is, like, it's not just free reign. You can't you can't just go on there and make it say what you want. I mean, I suppose you could, but people who would do that would not likely get approved for it. All right. Heaven answers they can be made by any of the many volunteers, but they are supposed to be checked by a professional reconciliator. There you go. However, the process with papyri is likely to be more stringent than that. Yeah, because the papyri, I'm willing to bet that the papyri are probably the most looked at manuscripts on the INTF site. Brother Maynard says only real purple shirts are made in Patmos. There you go. That's funny. All right. Let me get my notes here. I need to have another monitor so I can have my notes, and then I don't have to say, let me see my notes here. Oh. All right. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to show you why I think P32 is aphthonion. That it's not a row there. And this is kind of an interesting spelling. Now, I was unclear. I took a look at the entry into BDAG, and I was unclear as to the difference between aphthonion and aphthorion. I was under the impression that there is a difference in meaning. So aphthorion, for example, meant, let me see here. Aphthorion. You know what? Maybe I'll just show you my notes, because this will make things so much easier, and you'll be able to follow along with me. I got logos. Yeah, I put all my stuff in logos just because it's convenient for having my notes. Here, I'll pop that over so there you guys can follow. Yeah, so adiaphthorion, remember this was the Textus Receptus Byzantine reading, means integrity or sincerity. And this is some of the manuscript support. Aleph 2, which is a corrector. So this wasn't the original reading. I'm assuming the original reading was actually aphthorion without the adia at the beginning. I mean, we can take a look at that if you want to, but I don't think we're going to do that. We have Codex D, Codex Bizet for Bizet onlyists. There you go. It looks like the original scribe did that. Codex L, Psi, and then of course this is the Byzantine majority / TR reading adiaphthorion, and that means integrity. Aphthorion, without the adia before it, means soundness. So this is sound doctrine. So we have teaching with integrity, or with teachings showing integrity, or aphthorion, which is the second reading. This is the critical text reading, which is teaching with sound teaching or sound doctrine, right? That's kind of like where that comes from. And of course, is Aleph, A, C, D, K. This is your critical text reading, and then aphthorion, and this is where I kind of got stuck, because this way of saying it does not exist, generally speaking, in the New Testament. We don't have that in our printed editions. If you look at BDAG, the only place they reference is this specific textual variant, that this appears in Titus 2:7. And when I took a look at the definition that BDAG provided, It gave a sort of freedom from envy, or like speaking of abundance. Now, I asked this on a Facebook group, the nerdy biblical majors, and someone had suggested that maybe they just mean the same thing, and that could very well be the case. But I wasn't able to determine through BDAG that's what happened. Now, what I did do is I did take a look at the manuscripts, and what's interesting about the manuscripts, we'll take a look at these, is that the manuscripts with which this variant appears, aphthonion, right? Remember, this is the third option, the one that doesn't appear in any of our editions, right? This appears in 3 other manuscripts. So we have it in Codex F, 0101. We have it in Codex G, and then Minuscule 1881. Now, what's interesting is that Codex F and Codex G, both unsealed manuscripts, 9th century, both of the Western text type, are Greek Latin diglots. And apparently Codex F and G are super related. They are so close together that it's suggested that they came from the same source. So interesting that aphthonion is here. Now, when you take a look at it, which we will do, let's do that. Let's take a look at it. If you take a look at it, this is GA 101. There's the reading here. Now this is a microfiche, really crummy, but this is all I have of it. I'm sure there's a better one somewhere, but this is the reading here. Aphthonion. There's no doubt that this is a new here. Not adiaphthonion, just aphthonion. This is that third variant, and we have it there. And if you zoom out and come over here, here it is in Latin. And this is integratum, I think. This is what somebody said on Facebook. You know it's true because you heard it on Facebook. So I think that's integratum. I know Friendly Neighborhood Jesus Freak does a little bit of Latin. Maybe he can take a quick look at that and tell me if I'm right here. And that's generally speaking going to be integrity. So it doesn't seem to have those definitions that were supplied by BDAG, unless the translator of the Greek text. Now, again, I don't know which one is favored here. I think the Greek because it's on the left side. But the translators had adiaphthonion as integrity here. Excuse me. Again, you get the same thing if we take a look at the other manuscript, GA012. Again, another 9th century manuscript. I thought I had it set to go here, but it must have reset. That's okay. It's easy enough to find, I think. It is chapter 2, 116. There it is. So here it is here, aphthonion. And then you have integritat. So again, I think this is integrity. In integritate, yeah. So again, they seem to be translating this as integrity. So if we come back to my notes, we have, where is it? Adiaphthonion as integrity, with aphthonion being used in Latin as integrity. Now, again, does the Greek aphthonion mean integrity? I really honestly don't know. But it's interesting, though, that even though this word here and this word here quite possibly mean the same thing, have a similar, overlap in semantic domain, if you want to use the fancy words, then I mean, it doesn't matter in meaning. It does, like, this is what's so funny is that if that's the case, the meaning of these words, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so we're making this big deal about nothing. Yeah. Anyway, so whether there's a row now where it does matter is if the difference between adiaphthonion and aphthonion, there is a slight difference in nuance and meaning here, but it seems to be that adiaphthonion and aphthonion are the same. But anyway, so that's generally speaking. I mean, if we were to take the BDAG's definition, we might say something like an abundance of teaching, or and this is interesting. If we take a look at 1881, this is where you get kind of interesting. So if let's go to 1881. So this is a minuscule, and it's a 14th century manuscript, and this one stayed. That's good. Let's see if I can find it again in here. These things are so hard. There it is, aphthonion, right there. Now what's interesting here is they have punctuation. And so whoever copied this manuscript, or whoever put the punctuation in this line of manuscripts that was copied, understood Aphthonian to stand on its own and not be modifying didascalia. So that's interesting. So it's not sound doctrine or sound teaching. It's just teaching, right? And then comma, here's another virtue. So they tend to see the Aphthonian with a new as a separate idea, not something associated with didascalia. At least it's not acting adjectively. So that's interesting. So anyway, what else do we got here? Let's pop my notes over here. Here I am moving stuff back and forth. All right. So yeah, interesting that it's a Greek-Latin diglot. Now, those two first uncials were of the Western text type. And interesting that the minuscule is actually considered an Alexandrian. There's not many Alexandrian minuscules. But part of me wonders if this Adothonian reading, I partly want to say that it could possibly be a Latin intrusion with the new there. But if integrity is being used there, and we would generally use integrity with adiaphthorion, well then, I mean, yeah. All right, Heaven Jones is piping in there. He says the meaning difference seems to be sound versus generous. Yeah, I can see that. Abundance. So generous teaching. So would you understand that as being like, what is it? So would you understand didascalia Aphthonian as being, oh, no, it doesn't modify didascalia. Right. So they're just talking about general generosity, abundance. There we go. That makes sense. I just needed someone to help walk me through that. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Aphthonian, talking about being generous. There was a certain element of having freedom from envy. So again, Aphthonian is being used in the sense of a virtue that a Christian is expected to have. Generous would be understood as a separate virtue from the teaching. Yeah. As we see in Minuscule 1881, where they've actually punctuated it as such. That's interesting. Okay, thanks, Evan. That's good. I'm glad you're here to clarify that for me, because I was really kind of like going in on this one. Spent a lot of time on this. Couldn't figure it out. And BDAG just wasn't helpful, or at least it didn't. I'm surprised it didn't. And anyway, that's good. That's great. Thank you so much for that. All right. So the three reasons why adiaphthorion cannot be, why the King James Bible Research Council cannot say that this is a Textus Receptus reading, because it's not. And I would love for it to be a Textus Receptus reading, right? I'm a Byzantine guy. The Byzantine and the Textus Receptus, this reading matches the same. Like, they're the same here. It would be awesome for P32 to have adiaphthorion here, because then we could be like, there's a Byzantine text reading. But it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. I'll summarize the three arguments I put forward here. One, it's not likely that the scribe would confuse the row for new, because they're totally different. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying it can't, but it's something that's just difficult to happen. Show an example in the same manuscript. Yeah, I left myself some instructions. So if we can show that, why not? So let's go back to here. No, this one's better, right? Like, where do we got here? Is there a row on here? There's a row. Okay. There's a row right there. That's a row. That's a new. Okay. They're very different. I don't even think I really even need to show you, but you can see how different they are. It's not like someone's going to read that and be like, oh, a row. Is that a new? I don't know. I can't tell. But you might say, well, it looks like an English N, and an English N isn't. No, it's a V. It looks like a V. So to the Greek mind, they're not going to be thinking, oh, that looks like an N, right? Because that's English. It didn't come by until much later. I mean, maybe they mixed it up. But then they wouldn't make the connection with the new there. And anyway, my point is, they're different. No one's going to mistakenly write a new for a row, or a row for a new. So that's not going to be the case. The second one here is that the letters per line counts doesn't allow for the adia prefix. Too many letters. And we went through this already, how this is the line, as it is, 26 letters on that line is the most. And then everyone else sits between 21 and 25. And then all of a sudden, if you add the aleph, delta, iota prefix to add the Aphthonian, then that puts this beyond what all the other letters are. And of course, right, again, you might say, well, it could possibly be 27. And that's true, it could possibly be 27. But don't you find it suspicious that of the, the discussion that we're having here, that the line that we're having a problem with happens to be the biggest line, right? You factor this with the other one. He's not making a mistake between a new and a row. He's writing a new there because he saw it before. So those are the two things there. And then the third one here we didn't touch on, but this has to do with the second portion of the textual variant. Now, I didn't write this down. I should have, because it would have made it clear. But in the next line, where is it? So in the very next line, right, we have Athonion Simnotita, and then there should be one more word there for the Textus Receptus reading, but it cannot fit. It doesn't, like, this isn't even a question. But the critical text reading of the omission of the word here is what's in P32. You cannot make the Textus Receptus reading fit. So again, I'll open my Textus Receptus here, and there is aphtharsion, which means uncorruptibility. Uncorruptibility would be right here. But that adds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters. And there's no way that this is going to be a line with 33 letters in it. There's just no way. And I don't know anyone who would argue that. So again, this is not a Textus Receptus reading. You cannot get a Textus Receptus reading at all out of P32. It just isn't going to happen. So again, coming back to Steve Combs' video there, the little short that they added, I honestly think they should take it down, because all of the stuff that he talked about it is severely one-sided, and he presents information in a ho-hum way, just simply dismissing this as a spelling variant and so on and so forth. But in reality is when you actually dig into the issue and you start thinking through what you're trying to say, the TR reading cannot fit in Papyrus 32. It just cannot fit. We go back to the discussion surrounding P52. He says the article ho was, before the word instead of after, suggesting that ho Pilatos would actually be ho Pauline Pilatos, when that's not the case. In order for him to make that work, he has to invent a textual variant. And that's the same thing here. In order for the Textus Receptus or Byzantine reading to fit what we have in this manuscript, is you have to invent a textual variant to make it work. Adiaphthonian. When you add the adia in a prefix to Aphthonian, we don't have a textual variant of that. If we do, prove it, show it. But you have to invent a textual variant, even for P32. So of the two manuscripts that he mentions in his video, both of those manuscripts you have to create a textual variant for that. And, we don't want to create textual variants. We want to solve textual variants. Anyway, it just, man, again, I'm sure Steve Combs is a nice guy. I don't know him personally, but the research that he's doing and that he's showing is just straight up wrong. It's one-sided. There's half-truths in there. There's total bias. They're leaving out, they're omitting a tremendous amount of discussion. Like if we come back to the video, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here because we've gone through everything that I had. But if we go back to the video, let's just listen to what he's saying about some of these other things here.
Textus Receptus is based on the traditional text. Papyrus 66 is a mixed text. It has traditional text readings, it has Alexandrian readings, but it's dated 200 AD. Papyrus 64.
Okay, so he just mentions Papyrus 66 and says, well, there's Byzantine readings in it, and move on. It's not really a question of whether there's Byzantine readings. I mean, mostly is, right? Because the TR and the Byzantine are close. But are there any TR readings in there? That's what I would be interested in. Like Papyrus 66. Yeah, the pronunciation of Papyrus. P66, it's the Gospel of John. Like, does P66 have, like, it would be more incredible if P66 had John 5:4, the Pool of Bethesda. That would be incredible if that was in there. I'd be like, yes, yes. But it doesn't. It doesn't, because P66 is mostly an Alexandrian manuscript. He didn't provide any details. He didn't show any examples. Now, I have gone through the first 3 chapters in John, and I have the 2005 Byzantine text. And so Dr. Robinson in the apparatus there provides the differences between the Byzantine and the Nestle-Aule, and I think that's the 27th because it's 2005 edition. And so I took those, and I checked to see which side P66 would go on all of the variants. I think there are probably about 30 or 40 in the first 3 chapters. And I found 3 places where P66 actually sided with the Byzantine text against the NA27. So that there are Byzantine readings in P66. But what's happening here is Doctor, I don't know if he's got his doctorate or not. I'll just say Steve Combs. What he's doing here is he's just sort of brushing by it as a matter of fact without any discussion surrounding it. Because, again, P66, it's not a friend to the Textus Receptus position. It's not. Let's keep going.
4 is 3 little pieces out of the book of Matthew.
Here, let's go back here.
Papyrus 64 is
Papyrus
3
64.
little pieces out of the book of Matthew, written on the front and the back. A well-known, recognized, accepted scholar, papyrologist named Carsten Thiede, dated that papyrus at between 30 and 70 AD. Now,
so he says, a well-known, well-accepted scholar dated that manuscript to such and such between 30 and 70 AD. Now, first off, okay, well, maybe he's well-respected and well-known, but this research was not well-received. And Steve Combs leaves that out entirely. I did a video on this in the last little bit. Was it I can't remember, about a month ago. I'll just say about a month ago, because I'm not going to be staying on this King James Bible Research Council stuff for much longer. I don't think I'm going to be doing much after this, because I think I made the point. But if you go back into my videos, I discuss this P64. And the thing about Carsten Thiede is apparently he went back a second time and then put an exact date of 66 AD on it. Now, again, I haven't seen his research, but everybody has been refuting this claim and saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. Peter Head wrote an article expressing his concern. Well, I guess we'll say it that way. I think he wrote a paper debunking this idea from Thiede that it's dated in the 1st century. Now, of course, when text critics, right, papyrologists talk about 1st century, I'm sure there's some nervousness now with what's going on with it's still ongoing from what I understand with first century Mark. And what's his name, Dirk Albink, and the theft of the manuscript and the sale, and just a messy situation. So Dan Wallace expressed that this was the 1st century Mark, and they had it, and it was a debate, and then it turned out it wasn't actually 1st century, it turned to be 2nd century, and then a whole bunch of drama surrounding that specific manuscript and some theft and law breaking, and the authorities I don't know if they're still looking for him or if they found him or not, but the well-known papyrologist who committed fraud. From what I understand, I want to be careful here because I don't want to get sued if I'm wrong, right? From what I understand. So I could be wrong. So Carsten Thiede, this well-respected guy, but his research into this specific issue has not been received by the community. He claims that he dates it between 30 and 70, at least Combs does here. But again, I don't think you can get that narrow. And in Peter's article, coming against this idea that Thiede has, is basically saying, yeah, you can do that, but here's some reasons why, and it's completely subjective. You're basing this wild claim of 1st century Matthew, this wild claim on this, based on some subjective criteria. And then, of course, Peter goes on to express how he thinks it closely matches another manuscript that's a bit later. So none of this conversation is here when we talk about Combs. He mentions none of that. He just simply presents this as, oh, look, a scholar agrees with me, and so that's pretty cool. We're going to say that scholar did this, and it's all good and hunky-dory. But it's not. It's not. This is a half-truth. It's true that Carson Theed said these things, and he did these testing, and he looked at it with this special microscope and stuff. That's true. But the other side, right, the omission here is that it's practically rejected. His research has been rejected by the community at large, generally speaking. So anyway, we'll keep going.
There's an interesting thing in Matthew 26:22, because if you read the literature will tell you that in Papyrus 64 there is no difference between Papyrus 64 and this.
Yeah, he doesn't cite the literature here. I'd be curious to what he's looking at, because when I looked over the issue, there was actually, so he's going to show the type of textual variant and the question of what there's actually a couple different ideas as to what the portion of the manuscript is. Again, I'm not going to get into detail, but I think it came down to the question of whether there was a nu or a mu in there. And multiple people were arguing from multiple sides. So again, the question is what is he talking about? What is he citing? Which experts? What is he saying? Here, let me go back.
Papyrus 64 and this, the Nestle-Aland Greek text.
Is it maybe not in the apparatus? Maybe that's what he's talking about?
On one of those pieces of paper that have to do with Matthew 26:22, there are 3 letters that are at the top of the scrap, and they're torn off about in the middle of the letter. And you can tell what the first 2 letters are. That's not hard. It's the third one that you have to look close at. It's tau and omega.
Yeah, so looking here, the question is whether this little bit here, whether this represents a nu or a mu, and that changes it. I forget what the distinction, this was like a month ago, and if you remember, I cut it out and I like rotated things and tried to match it up, looked more like a mu. But again, yeah, he goes on.
And the third one is either an N, a nu, or an M.
Now, one thing I've noticed, if you look at all of the specific variant readings that he's trying to claim are Textus Receptus readings, like the one in P52, the one in P32. He doesn't mention anything in P66, so we'll just leave that out. And then here in P64, you notice that every single one of those lives in that gray zone. It lives in that like buffer area where you can't really tell. So like, every one of these papyrus manuscripts match the Textus Receptus in those uncertain places, right? That there's no definite place amongst these manuscripts that he's showing where we have a Textus Receptus reading, but rather we have to live in that sort of disambiguated, like, foggy zone to be able to determine that this is a Textus Receptus reading. And that's the case with all of these examples. And I think because you can look beyond the fog a little bit. And when you do look beyond the fog a little bit, you tend to find out that these are not Textus Receptus readings. He's reading his King James onlyist, his King James onlyism, his TR onlyism, if you want to call it that. He's reading that into the evidence here. See, he is starting with a conclusion, and he's looking for the evidence as opposed to looking for the evidence and finding the conclusion. And I think that's super clear based on the examples that he provides here.
A mu. Now the textual critics would like to say it's a mu. But if it is a mu, it couldn't possibly match this. If it's a nu, it couldn't possibly match this. Because this doesn't have a nu in that spot.
See, he presents this like it doesn't match the text, the critical text, but that's the critical text isn't what's on trial here, right? It's the Textus Receptus. The critical edition. Now again, I'm not a critical text guy. I know it sounds like I'm arguing. I'm not arguing for critical text. I'm just trying to see it from their perspective, right? like this is P64. P64 is going to say what P64 says, regardless if it matches the CT and TR or not, right? Like this could totally be another textual variant, kind of like P32. When we looked at P32, Aphthonian, that's it. Aphthonian was its own reading in that manuscript with a couple other variants. It was neither a Textus Receptus Byzantine reading or a critical text reading, right? So for him presenting this like, oh, it doesn't fit the critical text, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. Like this is silly. Anyway.
Between the O and the M in here, there are two words. And they're not in P64. Karsten Thied decided after deep study with all of their equipment that it was a new. And when he makes it a new, if he's right, it is a 100% agreement with the Textus Receptus. That is remarkable.
I don't think that was the case. I would have to go back and see my video on P64, but even if the new is there, it does not mean that it's a Textus Receptus reading. So he's again, right? He's putting a certainty on it that doesn't actually exist. Again, it's a conclusion. It's a conclusion looking for evidence, as opposed to evidence bringing a conclusion. Again, and he put so much into Karsten Thied's work without even mentioning the work that has been done to counteract that, and it's quite convincing. But when somebody has a conclusion looking for evidence to fill that, nothing will be convinced. They will not be convinced of anything else. In fact, just the way this has been done just shows that they're not really interested in what the actual papyrus says. They're only interested in what they want the papyrus to say, and that is that there's a TR reading in there, when in actuality there isn't. So let's finish up. I think this is it. Yeah, there you go. King James Bible Research Council. Man, you're called the King James Bible Research Council. Do better research. I say that knowing that sometimes my research is flawed. Okay, sometimes I make mistakes, and I'm happy to admit that. But when you come on and you say these things, and all of your examples have counter examples that are much more, what's the term? Convincing. When the counter examples are way more convincing than the ones you have, maybe you're just wrong. And this doesn't have to be a hill. This is what I don't understand. This doesn't have to be a hill for the King James Version only guys, or the Textus Receptus only people. You don't have to die on this hill, right? I'm a Byzantine prioritist, right? Well, I don't have to die on this hill. The papyrus are, in my opinion, geographically locked. Their readings are there. There tends to be a specific type of text surrounding Egypt. Like, it's not a problem if there's not Byzantine readings in there. Okay, that's not an issue. There was a quote from a quote from Eldon Epp in one of his papers that Dr. Robinson quoted in a video he did with Stephen Hackett. Yeah, and the quote was something along the lines of Eldon Epp basically admitting that the critical text is based off of a localized bunch of Egyptian papyri. I'll have to find it and share it because it's him expressing the concern that what you have in the papyrus manuscripts and those found in Egypt represent a localized text, and that there is no sampling of early manuscripts outside of that. So the assumption that the critical text makes is that these Egyptian papyri and these Egyptian manuscripts are a fair representative of the text around the Mediterranean, around the Mediterranean world, that it's a sampling of that. But that's an assumption, and it's unproven. And so when as a Byzantine prioritist we come to the papyrus, we're like, okay, cool, this is going to be different. No problem. No, we might find some Byzantine readings in here, but we're not going to find a lot, and it's not a big deal. Right? So why die on this hill? Why produce this weird, shoddy research that is wrong in many ways and is rather misleading? Why do that when you don't even have to die on this hill? I just looking at the comments here, right? We'll pop that over here. I think we're probably just about done. But looking at the comments here, Heaven Jones says exactly what the King James Bible Research Council needs. And if somebody from the KJBRC happened to make it this far, and I didn't make you too angry, man, just get some people to review your work. That's it. Just get somebody to poke holes in it, make it as airtight as you can, and roll with that. I'm telling you, you will be much better off. You will be defending the Textus Receptus in a much better way. And I would want you to, because the Textus Receptus shares so much commonality with the Byzantine text. Be a research council that tightens their arguments up and makes them difficult for these critical text guys. Make it difficult for Peter Gurry to get in there and poke holes in it, you know. Make it difficult for Heaven Jones to get in there and poke holes in it, right? Do that. Get somebody to poke holes in it so that you can get those ironed out before you go public with the work. And then you don't get someone like me going, oh, I called into the research council. So seriously, I hope you get in this far. Truly, I want you to be a stalwart, right? Defend the King James Bible with good research, okay? I'm not in the same place as you, but you can still defend it better than you're defending it now. So anyway, let's get to these comments, and then we'll go from there. Kept hearing all ages, steering away from pronunciation. Oh yeah, here we are. All right. Where are we here? Just trying to find the comment to start at. Generous would be, oh yeah, that was good. Refer to codex, create. All right. Brother Maynard says, I can refer to codex, create, lying at to us. They keep it in the library of the prophets of Crete. Their testimony is true because they are always liars. Should we trust the testimony from a liar? Oh boy. And the pronunciation of Papyrus. Yeah, Papyrus. Yeah, I just kind of left that alone. I think I'm going to leave that alone. Part of me, I'm just thinking that maybe it's just like, I think he's like a Southerner, and so that's just how Southerners say it. I think that's what I'm going to say. I might be totally wrong in assuming he's a Southerner, but he says Papyrus. All right. I kept hearing all of these. I'm steering away from pronunciation critiques. After all, you're a bunch of Yanks and Canucks. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Weasel words. Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing, though. I don't think that they're intentionally weasel words. I don't think so. I think that he's genuine and he thinks he found something really cool and is sharing it. But yeah, I like Heaven was saying, a little peer review goes a long way. I know that if I say something wrong in here, someone's going to be like, you said that wrong. And then I'll have to correct it. I've had to correct myself on one or two occasions, even on a Sunday morning, where I said something one week and then I listened to it and it's like, that's not right. So I had to correct myself. That happens from time to time. Well known, name him. Exactly, right? Again, if you're a King James Bible Research Council, show me your sources. What are you responding to specifically? Who is saying it's not even there, right? Like, these are just basic things. I'm not from academia, but these are just things you know. Like, you want to know who said it, where, when, what's the context surrounding that. But he offered none of that. There was no research in the Research Council. Brother Maynard, I have already dated the Papyrus P64 back to 046 BC. Is the knee or new better if it has that early of a date? Could my BC dating of the text be prophetic? Nobody knows. Probably not. Probably not. Heaven Jones, KJBRC needs friends to peer review them. Yes. The closing anime. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Kept peer in all ages. Christian. The whoever's doing the video. I think I know who's doing the video editing. It's excellent. Right, the music, the like suspenseful music in the background as he's talking about the Textus Receptus and the animations is wonderful, beautiful. I'd love to have some of that stuff for my channel. I'm just not gifted in that way, but yeah, the production value's on point for sure. One day you and I will have to have an Ep Robinson debate on Egypt and its significance. Oh, that'd be fun. Probably never going to happen, but hey, you should come to the conference. Come to the conference. Just book a flight. Come to the conference in March. We'll meet you in person, and then you can debate Dr. Robinson, and I'll moderate. There you go. All right. Mr. Moreno says, there is no defense against the purple shirt. That's right. It's the purple shirt. Papyrus of Alexandria, the famous church father. Papyrus of Alexandria, the famous church father. I think I missed that. Yeah, something that's really funny is we have two boys, and obviously I don't publicize them, but I don't make them public. But they've been playing this video game called Undertale, and one of the main characters in it, like the bad guy, his name is Papyrus. So when I'm talking about Papyrus manuscripts, he's like, "Dad, are you playing Undertale?" I'm like, "No." All right. Heaven Jones says, back to peer review. Be self-critical. Be critical of your own movement. Get friends who might disagree with you, but who can give friendly honest feedback. Yeah, but honest feedback. There we go. The little A threw me off. Hey, Heaven, you spelt it wrong. That's my friendly, honest feedback. KJBRC is not the only group who needs. Oh, definitely. Yeah, everyone needs it, to be honest. All right. There is no way to defeat the Torah TXT. Written by Moses, writing of his own death in the past tense. Why would he write "arg" on the cave of death when he could have just said "arg"? Nice. Debate Maurice Robinson. No way, chicken. I'll save some of the chicken feed for you, Heaven. All right. No, you mispronounced Papyrus. Papyrus. I don't know where the accent or where the whatchamacallit would go. It's a textual variant. That's right. All right. Well, I'm back. We were on vacation. We had a week of camping. It was glorious. It wasn't like the first time we went out. I went up to work hard, and I worked hard those 2 weeks, and then we went up a few weeks later, and it was nice. It was nice. I had to do devotions in the morning, but I had all that stuff prepped beforehand, so I didn't have to stress about anything, and we just enjoyed. The kids played with some of the other kids in the camp, and we just relaxed. It was good. Now, of course, I don't tell you when I'm going to go, because last thing I want to do is broadcast that I'm leaving for a week, right? You just don't do that. But I'm back. Kids are back in school. The routine's established. I got a couple ideas that I'm going to be touching on. I want to get some of that research done in P66. I wanted to do like a full-on papyrus thing and just compare a bunch of readings amongst all the papyrus. Because with that spreadsheet now, I can pull up a reading like, say, John 4, and I can validate amongst all the papyrus. I think there's like 6 papyrus manuscripts that have parts of John 4 in it, or something like that, just to see what the consistency is amongst the papyrus manuscript, to see how like close they actually are, or if there's like a ton of. I would just be interested in seeing that. Of course, I want to see if I can find some Byzantine readings among the papyrus manuscripts. That'll be good. I think a number of people would appreciate that. Considering starting a Substack, because I need to start, or something. Maybe if it's not Substack, maybe it's like a blog or something, because I need to start writing this stuff down, because I need to index my knowledge, if that makes sense, because people are asking me stuff and I know the answer, but I can't remember what it is. And then it just takes me forever to find it in a video to point someone to it. So if I had it in a website, kind of like James Snap has his blog and he's got all his stuff in there, or something like that, I'd love to get something rolling like that. I have some concerns about AI stealing my content and then people reading the AI content and not checking out the website and stuff like that. But I think I'm just going to do it anyway, regardless. So it would be a good resource, I think. So there's that. I don't know. I might go. Substack seems to be what people are doing these days. Again, I don't know anything about it. I'll have to put on my learning cap and figure out what's going on with that. And then a couple things with that is, I wanted to take a look at, I think Heaven, there was a Facebook post. Somebody posted a question about 1 Corinthians 14:2, and whether it says he who speaks in a tongue speaks to God, or he who speaks in an unknown tongue speaks to a God. And there was a question there about John. I'm pretty sure that the gentleman who was posting that got that from John MacArthur's commentary. I'm pretty certain of that, because I know what MacArthur's commentary says there, and he tends to say, well, it's an Arthurus, and so it's a God. But that's not the case. It's totally wrong. But there's a textual issue in there, which is interesting from a couple perspectives. One, because it's a textual variant, right? And it's interesting. Two, it seems to impact a doctrine here, because here you have John MacArthur actually not changing, but you see John MacArthur's view of cessationism and the gift of tongues is actually showing him, or is actually, influencing him in how he views that textual variant. So I had a friend just before I came on here send me a snapshot of that specific portion in the commentary, because I wanted to see, because I couldn't remember. Last time I saw it, I just popped into a Christian bookstore, and I just happened to see MacArthur's study Bible, and I opened it up to that passage and saw it. That's how I knew what it was. And so I just put it back on the shelf and said, that's interesting, and I just kind of kept that in the back of my head. So then I had a friend send me the full write-up so I could read the entirety of what 14:2 is. And he says that the article is not there, and then he leaves it at that, and then he keeps going. But what's interesting, okay, this is twofold. One is that grammatically there doesn't have to be an article there in order for theos to be articulate, right, or to be definite. But then on the other hand, there is this whole question of a textual variant there, and whether or not the article to exists there or not. And so obviously this is the Byzantine reading. The article is there in the Byzantine. And anyway, I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into that one, because of that, because the whole continuation of cessationist discussion is rather important to me, and I enjoy that. So if I can mash text criticism together with continuation cessationism, that'd be an interesting discussion. So I want to take a look at that. Of course, I wanted to do some a full hour and a half long, 2 hour long documentary on the ending of Mark. So I'm thinking about some idea. I've been talking about this for a long time. That's one of the more what do you call it? Oh, one of the more like ambitious. We'll say ambitious projects that I want to get started on. And then, of course, we have the Byzantine text form 2025/26. It looks like it's not going to release until early next year. We're currently working on modernizing the preface. So the preface of the 2005 edition, some changes need to be made based on some recent discoveries and stuff like that. And some of the vernacular needs to change. So we're going to be working on that to get that fixed up. The text itself, though, from what I understand, is completed. We have people doing proofreading right now. The apparatus is done. So we have the comparison between all of the printed editions of the Greek New Testament. When I say all, I don't mean every single one, but most of the ones you're probably familiar with. And then... what else here? Yeah, so that's going to be done. We have a conference coming up in March. There's so much going on. This is great. We have a conference coming up sometime in March. I've been Abaddon Shaw from Clearview Church in North Carolina is setting some things up there. So hopefully we'll have some official details coming out soon as to exactly when, but sometime in March. And I'm going to be heading up there. So if you can get there, fly out, whatever, I'd love to shake your hand and see y'all in person. And I think it'll be good to meet some of the guys that I've been talking to and finally get a chance to shake their hands and see them face to face. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm excited about that. And then after that, when the Byzantine text form is done, 2025, 2026, I'll probably be looking at doing some other new project of some sort. So maybe I'll just throw everything into this Mark documentary and see how that goes. But so lots going on this end. So keep keep watching, keep looking for my stuff. I might change up a few things. I'm thinking about changing the backdrop because it's I don't like how it's looking. And some interesting content is coming on the way. So let's finish up here. I got a couple more of your comments here, and then we'll call it a night. All right, here we go. Where are we here? All right, Heaven says it's a textual variant, Papyrus. Yeah. I'm going to have to say Papyrus now every time. All right, Mr. Moreno says, oh, a week of vacation instead of a week of holiday. And here I thought Canada was part of the Commonwealth. I don't know, we are so integrated with the U.S. in some ways, and in some ways we're not. All right, English CA is a mutant freak. It's not quite English US and it's not quite English GB. That's true. I usually have English US just because of weird things that happen. Jew and Greek is looking. I saw you pop that in when they started talking about MacArthur and the gift of tongues. Mr. Morenos is considering that holiday is an abbreviated form of holy day. I take issue with someone talking about the trip to Disneyland as if it were a pilgrimage. Agreed. All right. Jew and Greek says, I think it's in Johnny Mac's notes in his study. But yeah, it is. I was able to validate that literally 5 minutes before I came on the stream. That's going to be honest. That's part of the reason why I ended up being a little late. All right. Brother Maynard speaks to a God. Oh no. Did Johnny Mac just confirm the little God's doctrine the same way he was trying to contradict? So silly. Yeah. And I mean, you look at the context of the passage and Paul says later, I thank God that I speak in tongues more than you all. So like, is Paul speaking to a God and he's thanking God that he speaks to pagan gods? I don't think so. Like that's ridiculous on the surface. But I mean, maybe there's a rebuttal to that in his commentary. I'll take a look at that and see. I'm going to do a video on it because I'm interested in many facets of that conversation. It kept hearing all ages. I just received a rhema that you will hire me to build your blog website. Really? Does God speak to Presbyterians? I'm just playing, brother. All right, Brother Maynard. See Dwayne in the conference parking lot with purple shirts for sale. Yeah, I'm going to have to get a purple shirt. Textual discussions with Dwayne Green. All right. And Heaven Jones says, thanks for the update. And that is a good place to end. We're going to end on Thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness, for this live stream. You are good. Amen.